Hello and welcome back to Homebrew EDH, where I take you through my personal commander decks, how they work, and how they win. This is episode 50. We're starting off the new year with a bang. It's Korvold, Fae-Cursed King. It's 2 black, red, green, so 2 Enjund, for a 4/4 legendary dragon noble. He's got flying, and he reads, whenever Korvold, Fae-Cursed King enters the battlefield or attacks, sacrifice another permanent. And the second ability says, whenever you sacrifice another permanent, or a permanent rather, put a +1/+1 counter on Korvold and draw a card. This is just Jund good stuff, got lots of sacrifice synergy and an infinite combo because I'm that kind of person. So without further ado, let's get into the deck tech. So as you can see, I also got a custom deck box for Korvold made. I got this from a Etsy shop, I believe called Critical Crafts or something very similar. I'll have them linked down below in the description if you guys are interested in that kind of thing. They are fully wooden. They'll fit full commander decks, double-sleeved commander included. It's very, very nice, very well done on all of that. So huge thank you to them for providing these deck boxes to the public. Again, I'll have them linked down below. And yeah, not sponsored, just think it's really cool. And if you guys want to check them out, feel free. All right, enough blabbering. Let's get into the works of today's deck. All right, so the first section in today's deck tech is mana ramp, which is very important. This deck has a lot of stuff going on, so having the proper amount of mana to make sure everything works smoothly is very important. Obviously, we have your standard stuff like Kodama's Reach, Cultivate, Farseek, all that kinds of good stuff. We also have Bloom Tender, which taps for a number of colors of permanents we control, so generally it'll tap for 3 if we've got everything out. Culling the Weak, which also plays into our sacrifice theme. We sacrifice a creature at instant speed, get 4 black mana. And of course, Jeweled Lotus, because it's one of the best cards in the Commander format. Pretty simple. Obviously, there's more than just these 5, but I figured I'd just pick a few to showcase, and we'll keep moving right along. All right, the next section is our sacrifice outlets and all that good stuff. We have Carrion Feeder, which is 1 black for a 1/1 zombie that cannot block, but it's a free sack outlet that just says sacrifice a creature to put a +1/+1 counter on it. The Seer, same type of deal. It's a 1 mana 1/1 sacrifice a creature, but this one lets us scry, so that can be helpful with getting lands out of the way or anything like that. Lich Knight's Conquest from Wilds of Eldraine is a fun new addition to this deck. It's 4 and a black for a sorcery that says sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments, and or tokens, and return that many creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, which can be very, very useful. This is a very sacrifice-focused deck, so we generally have lots of stuff in and out of the graveyard anyway, so that can be one way to get a lot of stuff back out. And the other 2 are fairly common with Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar. Ashnod's is 3 mana for an artifact where we sack a creature to get 2 colorless, and Phyrexian is the slightly upgraded version, 3 mana, sacrifice a creature. We only get 1 mana, but it can be any color if we need it to be. Next up will be some of our token strategy. There's a lot of tokens going on with this deck, both creature tokens and treasure tokens and all sorts of other things going on with that. So first up we have Nadir's Nightblade, 2 and a black for a 1/3 elf warrior that says whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Skull Clamp, which kind of goes pretty well with that Nightblade. It's 1 mana for an artifact. Equipped creature gets +1/-1 whenever the equipped creature dies. Draw 2 cards, so lots of card draw. The equip cost is only 1 on that as well, so that can be pretty good. Awaken the Woods is X green for a sorcery that reads create X 1/1 green forest dryad land creature tokens. That's a mouthful, but it can make a bunch of 1/1s, which we can then sacrifice to those altars earlier or anything of that sort to get lots of triggers, draw cards off Korvold, and all that good other stuff. And to go along with that, we do have token doublers, parallel lives. If you would put 1 or more tokens onto the battlefield, or an effect would do that, you'd put that twice that many instead. I do also have Doubling Season in here as well. Speaking of creating tokens and such, Mirkwood Bats is pretty cool. It's 3 and a black for a 2/3 bat with flying. It says whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. So it can be a group slug type of deal. If you make a whole bunch of tokens, it does trigger for each token, which is pretty cool. Academy Manufacturer is the last one on this list, at least for right now. 3 mana for a 1/3 artifact creature that says if you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, instead create 1 of each. So I don't have a lot of clue or food, but we do have lots of treasure tokens, as you'll see in the next section. So we just get to make a bunch of extra tokens, which then we can pair with a bunch of other cards, like the Mirkwood Bats or the Parallel Lives and all that good stuff to start slinging things around and hopefully finishing the game not too long after. And speaking of all those tokens, we have a lot of treasure token synergy in here as well. So we have Zorn, which is 2 and a red for a 3/2 elemental that says if you would create 1 or more treasure tokens, instead create those tokens plus an additional treasure token. So it's not a doubler, it's a X plus 1. So if you would make 4, you would make 5 instead, that kind of thing. Dockside Extortionist, everybody knows the card, 1 and a red for that 1/2 Goblin Pirate. When it enters, create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. We have Professional Facebreaker, which is 2 and a red for a 2/3 Human Warrior with Menace. It reads, whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. And it also reads, sacrifice a treasure, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So it's temporary card advantage with a sacrifice ability specifically for treasure tokens. And with Korvold out, we get to exile and draw and do all sorts of other cool stuff. And then we have Etsushi the Blazing Sky, 2 red for a 4/4 Dragon Spirit with Flying and Trample. That reads, when it dies, you get to choose one. We can either exile the top 2 cards of our library, and then till the end of the next turn we can play those, or just straight up create 3 treasure tokens, which is generally the option that I go for the most often with this card, purely because it's more sacrifice stuff, and I'm drawing cards anyway with Korvold out, so it's not really necessary to exile the top when I'm just drawing all of those cards anyway. And before we wrap up today, I have 2 more sections to go through. This section is just explaining the infinite combo part, Wither, Bloom, Apprentice, and Chain of Smog. So Wither, Bloom, Apprentice is a green and a black for a 2/2 Human Druid that has Magecraft that says whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And Chain of Smog says 1 and a black for a sorcery that says target player discards 2 cards from his or her hand. That player may copy this spell and may choose a new target for that copy. So basically what you do is you have your Wither, Bloom, Apprentice out, you cast Chain of Smog targeting yourself. You have at least your other 2 cards in hand to discard, and then you can target yourself over and over and over again. And when you have all those copies on the stack, holding priority and all that good stuff, your Wither Bloom will trigger until everybody else is dead. So it's fairly simple on that combo. And then the last part for today is just going to be some good cards that I didn't really think fit anywhere else. And I figured I'd just want to show them off before we wrap up. Alright, so these are just 5 cards that I really like in this deck for no particular reason other than they're cool and I just like them. So my revised Badlands, the revised Wheel of Fortune, the Enchanting Tales Grave Pact, which is pretty cool. That can also wrap up games fairly quickly. If you don't know, Grave Pact, 1 and 3 black. For an enchantment that says whenever a creature you control dies, each other player sacrifices a creature. So it's great for just wiping boards because all we have to do is sacrifice our creature tokens and everybody else is kind of helpless. The last 2 I've got down there are Tireless Provisioner and Malevolent Witchkite. So Tireless Provisioner is 2 and a green for a 3/2 Elf Scout with Landfall. That says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a food token or a treasure token. I almost always go for treasure tokens unless I absolutely need the life. Sometimes does happen, but if I'm that close to dead, I'm basically dead next turn anyway. And Malevolent Witchkite is actually a really cool card that I have found from Wilds of Eldraine. It's 4 black for a 5/4 Dragon Warlock with Flying. That reads, when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments, and or tokens, then draw that many cards. So if you've got a bunch of extra tokens sitting around, and if maybe Korvold happens to be out at the same time, we would actually draw twice as many cards, because you would draw the cards off of this, and then draw off of Korvold's sacrifice trigger as well, and you get to make Korvold bigger in the process. So that's pretty much all I've got, and we're going to finish this thing right up. Alright guys, I hope you did enjoy this deck tech. If you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you do subscribe, be sure to ring the little bell. It keeps notifications on, that way you don't miss any new deck techs that I may come up with, and it just helps grow the channel by having you guys stick around. In the description, we will have a link to both the full deck list for this deck, as well as a link to the shop where I got the custom deck box from. They are really, really cool. The shipping is pretty fast, and the prices are actually okay for what you get. I mean, it's solidly built, it looks really nice, and it holds a full double sleeve commander deck. So for your standard average player, hey, it's a nice treat if you've got some extra money swinging around from Christmas or New Year's, and you're looking for a really cool deck box. Go hit up Critical Crafts on Etsy. They're really awesome. They do take requests on some occasions for certain types of things. If you're looking for something specific they don't have, you can always reach out to them. Not sponsored, I just think they're awesome, and I want to say thanks to them for being able to do that for the public. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's all I've got for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.